I've had a few people ask me about the quick graphite studies I've been doing lately before I do my watercolour paintings. They want to know how I do them. So today I'm going to show you how I do them, and I'll also show you how this little graphite study helped me paint this blue tit in watercolour. This little drawing took me about an hour to do, and it really helped with the final painting. I stuck it up on the wall in front of me when I painted, and I referred to it almost as much as I referred to the reference photo while I was painting. Last year, I realised the benefits of doing a graphite study of my subject before I painted. They're not works of art, they're just simple little drawings that help me map out my painting. I've had a few people ask me how do I do them. So today I'll show you my process, but more importantly, I want to show you why I do them. I feel that my painting skills are improving now, and I believe that some of that improvement is because of these graphite studies that I'm doing. I painted this blue tit last week, and before I painted it, I did this graphite study. This is the reference photo that I used. I downloaded it from Pixabay. It was taken by Wendy Cornick. The first thing I do is open the photo in Photoshop, and then I make it black and white, and that allows me to see all the tonal values more clearly. Then I save it and I send it to my iPad so that I can refer to it when I'm drawing. I do a quick line drawing of the bird on an A4 size piece of paper, and then I use my graphite pencils to start adding some shading. This is a piece of Arches hot pressed watercolour paper. I prefer to draw on smooth paper rather than textured paper, and I find that hot pressed watercolour paper is as good as any that I've tried. When I want a finer line, I'll use my mechanical pencil. This one here is an HB, I think, and it's 0.7 millimeters in width. This is a Staedtler micron pencil, I think. It's not very expensive. I do most of the shading with a soft graphite pencil. This one here is a 5B that I'm using. I've been using a blending stump or a paper stump because I can blend the graphite really quickly with it. It helps me to soften edges, and I'm able to visualize what the watercolor paint will do when I put it on the paper. I carry the graphite off onto the background, and I'm able to play around with what I think I'd like to do on the background of my watercolor painting. So you can see here I've taken the graphite onto the background. If I don't like the way it looks, I can get my eraser and remove it and change it if I need to. These drawings help me get acquainted with my subject. I'm able to look at the tonal values and see where the darkest areas are and where the lightest areas are. I can work out where I need to keep the paper white and where I need to put my heaviest pigment. As I lay the graphite down, I can see that I may need to go darker with it in my dark areas. So then I layer over the top of it again to make it darker, which is the same thing I do when I paint. I don't go too dark too quickly. So I layer my graphite the same way I layer my watercolour paint. I'm also able to simplify areas that are highly detailed. I can think about where I want to put detail and where I want to make it simpler. Here on the branch, I knew I wanted to keep most of the colour near the bird. That's where my focus is. I thought I'd make the paint fairly dark near the bird, and then as I move my way away from the bird, I'd fade the colour out. So drawing it like this helps me to see what it's going to look like. And it also reminds me to do this when I actually start painting. Here I've got a kneadable eraser, and I can come back over my darker graphite and take some of it off. And that leaves some lighter highlights and creates some texture on the branch. This gives me an idea of what it's going to look like when I paint it. Then I can come back onto my bird and start removing some of the graphite here. I can use the paper stump as well to soften edges. This helps me to determine what external edges I want to soften or lose altogether, and what edges I want to remain hard. Now I have a simple little study that not only helps me with the tonal values, but also helps with what I'm going to do with those external edges and what I'd like to do with the background. Once I've done the graphite study, I sometimes like to do a colour study, particularly if I'm not familiar with my subject. In this case, I didn't do a colour study because I've painted quite a few of these little birds over the years. So I was fairly confident to start my painting without the colour study. Now I want to show you how the graphite study helps me when I'm painting. But before I do that, I'd like to thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning platform that has thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on all sorts of topics, including illustration, design, photography, video, freelancing, and more. As you may know, I've been working with Skillshare for a few years, and I'm now working on my 12th watercolour class with them. This is my subject here, and yes, I did a graphite study before I started my painting. I hope to have my next class published in April this year. Most of the classes on Skillshare are under 60 minutes with short lessons to fit into your schedule. This class here by Rosalie Hazlett is a beginner-friendly watercolour class that will get you painting natural subjects like mushrooms and ferns. You can paint along with Rosalie using her reference photos, or you can take your own photos and paint from them. Rosalie's class is called Watercolour in the Woods, a beginner's guide to painting the natural world. An annual subscription to Skillshare costs less than $10 a month, so it's good value. If you've not used Skillshare before and you'd like to take a look around and have a look at some of the classes that are on offer, I've included a link with this video. The first 1,000 subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership so they can explore their creativity. Okay, back to my painting now, and this is the important part. Let me show you how the graphite study helped me when I was painting my watercolour painting. I've done a simple line drawing and I've transferred it onto my watercolour paper. There are 4 places around the external edges of my bird where I've left the pencil line off. I left those blank to remind myself that that's where I want to create a lost edge where I don't put any paint. The reason I know how to do that is because at the end of my graphite study, I went back and I started to remove and soften some of the external edges. Then when I begin painting, I can begin confidently because I've got a plan and I know where to start and what I want to do. Here I'm wetting the yellow parts of the bird, and because of my graphite study, I know that I'm going to take this colour off onto the background, so I need to wet the background here as well. I've got Windsor Lemon here. I paint that onto the wet paper. I want the yellow on the front of the bird, and as I said, I want the yellow to bleed off into the background. So there's my yellow on the background. On my graphite drawing, I've drawn it so that the edge here dips in a bit. It's more curvy on the drawing, and I prefer the way it looks, so I've just used my brush to take a bit of paint off there. Towards the end of my drawing, I got my kneadable eraser and I took a bit of graphite off the paper there. I didn't particularly like the shape that I had, so I was able to alter it easily. With the blue feathers on top of the head, I've also got a bit of background there, and I thought that I would let the paint bleed off there as well. So again, because of my graphite drawing, I know that I need to wet the background there as well. And I also have a bit of an idea of what it's going to look like. I use French ultramarine, I put it on the feathers on the top of the head, and then I gently push it off into the background. I can lift it off my table too to make it move further. You can see right at the start of the painting that the graphite drawing that I did is helping inform my decisions as I paint. On my graphite study, I put some smudgy marks onto the white feathers with my paper stump, so I knew that I needed to put a bit of colour there on my painting as well. I tried to draw soft edges on the ring of dark feathers that run around the neck. I thought that the soft edges would look better and less harsh than hard edges. So I knew when I painted these feathers that I should paint them on wet paper so that the paint will bleed gently and give me those soft edges. The same thing here on this strip of dark blue feathers that run down the front of the bird. I knew I needed the edges of those to be soft as well, so I painted them on wet paper too. And on the branch, remember I said I wanted most of the colour to be near the bird, so I made that area quite dark. As I moved my way down the branch away from the bird, I reduced the contrast of the graphite. I then came back with my kneadable eraser and I took a bit more of the graphite off. So that helped me to visualise what the branch was going to look like in paint. So when I put the paint on, I kept most of the paint near the bird, and lower down on the branch, I used a lot less paint and I let more of the paper show through. This is a grey I mixed from French ultramarine and burnt sienna. I'm working on wet paper. I kept it quite simple down at the base of the branch because that's not where my focal point is. My focal point is the bird. I like to use the same colours that I've used on my bird when I paint my branches. So here I'm dropping in a bit of Winsor lemon. I knew I needed to go darker near the bird, so I got some Payne's grey out and I started to run that along the lower edge of the branch. And I did the same thing on the other side. I kept most of the paint, or the darkest paint, near the bird, but as I worked my way along the branch, I had more white paper showing and my paint colour was lighter in value. On my graphite drawing, I used my kneadable eraser to take some of the graphite off in the darker areas to create some texture. So when I did my painting, I dropped some water onto the drying paint to try and create some watercolour blooms in that darker area. As I paint the claws on the feet here, you can see those watercolour blooms and how they've dried in the darker areas of the branch. So the hour that I spent drawing this little study was time well spent. These graphite drawings stop me from rushing in gung-ho and beginning my painting without thinking about it. They slow me down and allow me to become acquainted with my subject. I'm able to plan how I want my painting to look, and I particularly enjoy being able to plan how I want those external edges that I've discovered are really important. I hope this video was helpful to you. Please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, and I'll be back next week with some other new creation that I've done. I'll see you then. I stuck it up in front of me on the wall when I painted, and I referred to it almost as much as I referred to the painting. No. I referred to it almost as much as I referred to the reference photo, Louise. Now I want to show you how the graphite study helps me when I'm painting, because I've painted quite a few of these little blue tits over the years, so I was pretty confident to start painting without this study. I've included a link with this video. The first 1,000 those people, subscribers. Okay, back to this painting. And this is the important part. Let me show you. This class here by Rosalie Hazlett is a beginner-friendly watercolor class. It's a watercolor class. Sounds interesting. I'm able to plan my painting, how